So what does it mean to spare the rod, spoil the child? It basically means if a parent refuses to discipline an unruly child, that child will grow accustomed to getting his own way. He will become, in the common vernacular, a spoiled brat. The same next comes from Proverbs 13:24. He who spares a rod hates his son, but he who loves him is careful to discipline him. The Lord uses discipline to reveal our sin in us. This is also how parents reveal the truth of our need for a Savior to the children. Really, it's the only way you can get them to believe the dumb horse shit that you believe, right? A big invisible man says bang and there it is. Oh, give me a break. Yeah, you have to beat that shit in them. That's the only way that they'll ever believe that. And then you got to get around a bunch of other people that are beating that shit in them too. Furthermore, correction shows that we're not above reproach. And so essentially, I think that's the only way that, child abuse is going to continue to happen because people, they're around others. So the way that are beating their kids too, because you got to pound that into their skulls because nobody's going to actually believe that on their own. But the way the conversation seems like, well, but I kind of feel bad. Oh, don't feel bad. I'm doing it too. Okay, well, I don't feel bad anymore. So they get around like-minded folks who are doing the stupid shit. And because they're doing the stupid shit, it's a reinforcing, right? It's a reinforcing mechanism. Well, if everybody else is hitting their kids, then I guess I should do it. I should be fucking shitty to my kids too. Fuck your own kids up. If that's what you want to do, fuck them up. Because that's what it's doing. That we're accountable for our actions. Our natural pride blinds us to our need for a Savior. Because that's not natural. And discipline reveals the truth of our wretchedness, because we're all really evil, despicable people. Revelations 3:17. Since salvation is the most important choice the child will ever make, it is imperative that parents are leading him to Christ, and discipline is critical to this process. Proverbs 23:13 says, "Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish him with the rod, he will not die." In the context of verses 13 to 14, die means experience spiritual death in hell. Children who respect authority and feel sorrow for their sin are much more likely to ask Jesus to forgive them and to be saved. All children are born sinful. Romans 5:12-19. They're natural. And then God said, let there be light. And then he clapped his hands, and then there was birds and trees, and he took a rib out of the Adam's chest, right? He could make everything out of nothing, out of dust, but he needed a rib for some reason. So nobody's going to read that story and actually believe this shit. So you have to say, it's fucking true. And then you want to talk about morality. If you're violent, rape, murder, stealing, violence, those are the 4 worst sins out here, the first worst evils one person could do to another. They don't have any fucking morality to begin with. They don't know what the fuck morality is. Just shut up and listen. Be obedient. That's the only thing that they think it's a virtue. Adam and Eve, not even the Pope, believes Adam and Eve. Noah's Ark, give me a break. It's fucking children's stories. That's just bullshit. And when it comes to children, if you're before the age... So it goes to our human nature. Their natural self is destructive and unrighteous. That does not mean that they aren't valuable and worthy of love. So Romans teaches us everybody's born sinful, and then you're basically evil. You're born evil, but it does not. It means that they are not born with any natural goodness in them. That is why all children need discipline. Proverbs 22:15 says, "Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, and the rod of discipline will drive it far from him." Discipline is critical for wisdom. Proverbs 29:15, "And a child who obeys his parents will be wise." Proverbs 13:1. Chapter 13, verse 1. "Even adults who do not heed correction will feel the consequences of their foolishness." Proverbs chapter 10, verse 13. Some people believe in discipline, but not in physical discipline, such as spanking. However, the Bible is the final word on what is truth. It is not mere opinion or theory. Before the age of reason, and if the kid is before the age of reason and you're hitting them, they don't know why you're hitting them. And if they're after the age of reason, then they can be reasoned with. Children want your approval. In fact, it's a teacher tactic, is to If you can get them to like you, if they like you, then they will want your approval. In order to get your approval, they'll be compliant. So if that's all you want is for them to be submissive. But for me, I'm going to make my kids strong and proud. They're going to know who they are. They're going to, for the first 12 years, they're going to do whatever they want as long as they don't hurt anybody. But they're going to find out who they are. They're going to discover, what they like, what they don't like, what their ambitions are. And once they have a good sense of themselves, then I'll work on assimilating them into society. But they're going to be strong. If you make a kid strong, they'll be. However, the Bible is the final word on what is truth. It is not mere opinion or theory. The word rod indicates a thin stick or switch that can be used to give a small amount of physical pain with no lasting physical injury. A child should never be bruised, injured, or cut by a physical correction, which is what a police officer actually told my friend one time. You're allowed to hit your kid, just don't leave any marks on them. The Bible warns that parents should never abuse the power and authority they have over their children while they're young because it provokes the children to righteous anger. Ephesians 6:4 and Colossians 3:21. I never hear about that part. I think I'll actually look more into that. Physical discipline is always done in love, never as a vent to the parent's frustration. It is also just one part of discipline and should be used when the child shows defiance to a clear limit, not in the heat of the moment. God instructs parents to parent their children the way He parents His children. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 5 to 11 tells us. So Hebrews chapter 12, 5 through 11 tells us that God disciplines those whom He loves to perfect their righteousness. God only disciplines His own, which proves that Christians are His beloved children. Notice that David says that the Lord's rod comforts him in his time of trouble. What? Psalm 23, verse 4. Finally, we know that no discipline feels good while it is happening, but afterward the rewards are rich. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11. Godly character, fruit of the Spirit, and peace are rewards of God's discipline. The same is true for our human children. Children who have learned how to take responsibility for their actions are much happier people. Proverbs 3:11 to 18. But if you're a violent psycho, then you don't ever get held accountable for that. The importance of the rod of correction is that it steers the heart of a child towards Jesus and the forgiveness of sin He offers. When parents trust God's methods over their own, they will see the blessings. There is a couple of Dutchmen from the Netherlands, right? That's what a Dutch is. They were going around giving interviews. They were reading the Quran, passages from the Quran, and getting people's reactions to them. But they was actually reading from the Bible. And people's reactions was like, oh my God, I can't believe them damn Muslims are like that. And it turned out it was their own, book. So it just leads me to believe you're supposed to worship the book. You're not actually supposed to read the thing. It's crazy. Scientists, they read like dozens and hundreds of books, and then they're supposed to act like, they have all this uncertainty and doubt. And then other people only read one book, and then they think they know it all, and they don't even read the one book. They don't even read it. They're listening to someone else's interpretation of what was read to them. And that's a dismal perspective of human nature. I think we're born good. I believe we're born good and evil, but this passage, it sounds like a Protestant. Parenting is hard work. Dr. Scott Tereski, Johan Miller. And it's Protestants, which is King James. King James wrote the Bible, the King James Version, right, and put it into English. And King James himself was a homosexual. So, he's a gay man, and then they're going to say, well, remember that one passage in that one part, and they cherry pick, and they forget about, like, all the crazy stuff about stoning whores, and, if a woman sleeps with rent, you got to stone her, and then you can't wear the same fabric, the polyester cotton mix, you got to be killed with that. It's also, King James was who Guy Fawkes tried to blow up. Guy Fawkes, anonymous, mask figure. There's King Herod. Well, let's see. Jesus' face is actually. Protestants are using a book that was written by a homosexual, and then hating gay people just because in Leviticus or something it said something. But they're not actually. They're cherry picking. They're not looking at the entire context. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give the entire context to spare the rod, spoil the child. Jesus' face, this is just things I'm coming up, thinking of right now, is actually Caesar Borgia. I don't even know if Jesus was a real person. His historicity is in question. I also want to mention Abraham. Abraham, God tells Abraham to kill his son Isaac, and he's like, fuck you, kid. He's about to murder him. And that's God's test to see how obedient he is to God. And wouldn't it be nuts to be basically, I don't really love you, kid. I only love you because your father loves you, I don't love you for who you actually are. And some people want to criticize atheists because it's like, well, what do you criticize atheists because say, well, what bounds you to be good? And actually, that's a good criticism, but that's a good criticism of Christians too. Because if you're going by a Bronze Age book, 2,000 years ago with a bunch of, deserts and camels and Middle Eastern people, then you're not living in today's world. But I have a moral core. So I believe justice is eye for an eye, and I believe in the golden rule because it's logical, not because it's biblical, but because it's logical. If someone's shitty to you, you're shitty to them. If they're nice to you, you be nice to them. That just makes sense. I don't want to get hit. I don't want to be robbed. I don't want someone to murder or rape me, so I don't do that stuff to others. And if I can't do harm, or if I can't help, I'm not going to do any harm. But I think some people don't understand that. I think some people just want to hurt others. And why? Because, they're getting their authority from a lot of fucked up passages in the Bible, infanticide everywhere, just killing babies everywhere. King Herod, as soon as Jesus was born, he said to kill all the male babies. Kill all the male babies. So that way the Savior won't be born. It seems an insane policy to initiate all across the land. But maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's some truth to it. You can't really tell what part is history and what part's made up. It's been translated and rewritten so many times. Moses has said some fucked up shit. He was like, if the woman already had a man, kill everybody. But if the girl is a virgin, then keep them for yourselves. And I remember the one meme, the girl's like, what? But yeah, okay, so Psalms is supposed to be written, Proverbs, my bad. Proverbs is written by King Solomon. And King Solomon was supposed to have used that discipline for his own son. And that his own son, Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So, and then Colossians chapter 3, verse 21, fathers, do not provoke your children lest they become discouraged. So they're saying discipline but not abuse. Don't go too far because they'll become discouraged. They'll have a righteous anger. And you don't want them to have a righteous anger, to have a legitimate reason to hate you. Just to piss your kids off, just to piss them off, just for the fuck of it, just for a laugh. I just pissed them off. I humiliated them and insulted them and pushed them in the mud. Oh, that is so fun. It's not fun. It's fucked up. But it also makes you think about this old woman that was in Letcher County. All she did was read the Bible all day, and her husband hated it. Hated her, didn't like her. She was boring. She was fake. She was fake. And so essentially what this is saying is that, fuck fake people, right? But more importantly, I had a story about an atheist father who had hit his kid, and she was like, oh, I don't like that. You never hit your father. But if you're a Christian, that person don't believe in God. So which one are you? You're all about hitting children or fuck God? Make your choice. Is your religion all about hitting and hurting children, or is it about actually Christianity and loving the Lord and all that shit? Which one is it? The fact that she was more pissed off that the kid had fought the father back because the son hits him back, and she was more pissed off that the son hit his father back. So if you're more, mad that that the son of an atheist had. If you make your kids strong, they will be good. Because who would choose otherwise? If you're strong and capable and can do anything, why would you choose the otherwise? But if you're weak, then you'll be evil because you're not empowered. You don't know how to assert yourself. So you say, fuck it. It's probably why school shootings happened. I would actually say for my problems, that, basically they get picked on, nobody listens, nobody cares, and then bam, shit happens. But I would say from most of my problems, it comes from weakness. It comes from a lack of options and a lack of, ability to change my circumstances or to stand up to the oppressors. I also think child abuse is perverted. Your butt is an erogenous zone, so if you're getting hit on your erogenous zone, you can become masochistic, and you might take pleasure out of pain. So you're more pissed off that a son of an atheist defending himself against the atheist. You don't give a shit about Christianity. Christianity doesn't mean jack shit to you. The Bible, this, that, be good to others. You don't give a fuck about any of that. The whole point is just to be shitty to the kids. That's why there's so much infanticide. That's why Abraham was told to kill his own kid. That's King Herod killed all the boys. Moses said all that fucked up shit. So, I've read to you first was the Protestant perspective. Now I want to actually get into it a little bit. So the Proverbs, that's where all this spoil the rod, spare the child, spoil the rod, spare the rod, spoil the child. That actually is not in the Bible. That sentence is nowhere in the Bible. It's a small victory, but if someone says spare the rod, spoil the child, it's not in the Bible. That's not there. But there are close quotes in Proverbs. I think religion makes people insane because they see their entire worldview through that prism. They see that entire world through the lens of their religion, so their entire worldview is distorted. George Carlin, they're also more likely to believe in fiction for obvious reasons. They already believe in fiction. And George Carlin actually said that once you buy into the Adam and Eve story, Noah's Ark, and all the rest of that horse shit, which even the Pope says that it's not true, then you'll believe all the horse shit, that we're a democracy, that we're a force for good, that we're not killing babies overseas, we're not an empire, cops do good, prisoners are doing good. You'll believe all the bullshit. So it's not, it has nothing to do with right or wrong. It has to do with that they're submissive to authority. They don't have a moral conscience. They don't have any sense of morality whatsoever. So actually, what a gift Christianity would be for a government. If I was the king, yeah, be a Christian. So there's one, Proverbs 13:24, he that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes diligently. So if you love your kid, you beat them. If you don't, then you actually hate your kid if you don't beat them. But that's, they'll say rod and some other shit. So, I see where it could have got it from, but the actual quote, spare the rod, spoil the child, is nowhere in the Bible. Just quotes that are very similar to it. Now, religious conservatives and religious liberals look at King Solomon a little bit differently. Religious conservatives are fundamentalists, and so they say that this is King Solomon, and this is how he's treating his son Rehoboam. So Rehoboam is actually a shitty king, a shitty leader. Rehoboam is like really crappy. He loses the kingdom. The 12 tribes of Israel were all organized, and then the 11 tribes rebelled. And so if I'm the king, shut your damn mouth. Shut your damn mouth and do what the hell I tell you. Just go over there and do what I tell you. Be submissive, just like God says. God says all the authority figures are right. So shut your mouth and do what I tell you. Render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's. Pay me my fucking taxes. And I want to mention something else too with atheists not having any morality. So that could be true of anybody. There's going to be bad people and there's going to be good people. I have a moral core, so I think that atheists should adopt a moral core, and so should Christians. But bad will be bad and good will be good. But for good to be bad, you need religion. For people to do bad things in the name of goodness, you need to be fucked up. You need to be brainwashed and fucked up with religion. So atheists might not have morality, but they don't do bad things in the name of something good. They don't pretend what they're doing is good, Religious conservatives think that this is King Solomon and how he treated Rehoboam. Now, Rehoboam fucked up, so why would you use an example of a Bible when it didn't help? Because, first of all, there's no extra biblical proof that a Rehoboam even exists. But according to Kings in Chronicles 2, he was initially the king of the United Monarchy of Israel, but after the 10 northern tribes of Israel rebelled in 932 BC to form the independent kingdom of Israel, he remained as king of only the kingdom of Judah, the southern kingdom. And that's it. He's a son of Solomon, a grandson of David. His mother is Naamah, an Ammonite. So Rehoboam lost his kingdom. The 10 northern tribes of Israel rebelled against him, and all he had control over was the kingdom of Judah. And that's it, just the kingdom of Judah. So one episode with the Bible places during the reign of Rehoboam, which is confirmed by records. Anyway, religious liberals who say that it's not the literal fundamentalist word of God, that they're, they kind of say they want to find out where it came from. And so Solomon first introduced ancient Oriental wisdom to Israel, and later it became customary to attribute all books belonging to this particular literary genre to him. The actual authors of Proverbs were the successive generations of wisdom teachers or wise men who had charge of the moral and practical training of young men of the court and upper classes. King Ezekiel is mentioned in Proverbs 25:1. Thus, Proverbs in its current forms cannot date from earlier than his reign in the 8th century BC. It may have been assembled as late as 4th century BCE. So the Book of Solomon isn't even Solomon. And actually, the Bible, it omits books. The Book of Jubilee isn't even in the Bible, but I remember reading and singing Jubilees. Jubilees are like songs in the Catholic Church now. Did they make Jubilee songs because they did the Book of Jubilee? Did they make sure that the Catholics were singing Jubilees so that way they would never read the Book of Jubilee? From our study of conservative Protestant books on child raising and the content of numerous radio programs on Christian radio stations, it appears that many fundamentalists and other evangelical Christians equate punishment and discipline with corporal punishment. That's what they mean. They need discipline. They need punishment. They need to be hit by my hand. That's what they need. They need to be hit. And so they're more likely to hit somebody in their own house than they are to hit someone else, which means they're fucking hypocrites. They're more likely to harm and hurt you, just like governments are more likely to kill their own citizens and foreign citizens. The same with an oppressive household. You're underneath their wing. So it's not clear whether the discipline referred to at the end of the New Testament verse refers to corporal punishment or some other form of correction like the removal of privileges. So, conservative versus liberal, the Bible subsequently records the negative effect that this parenting style actually had on Solomon's kids. So, the direct example that they are using isn't even a good one. You want to quote Proverbs? Well, King Solomon fucked up his kid and he fucked up the kingdom. Rehoboam is his son. Rehoboam was a widely hated ruler. After his father's death, at one point he had to make a hasty retreat to Jerusalem to avoid being assassinated by his own people. 1 Kings 12:13-14, the king Rehoboam answered the people roughly and forsook the counsel of the old men which they had given him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. 1 Kings 12:18, then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the men subject to taskwork, and all Israel stoned him to death with stones. Adoram was killed. The king Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was over the men subject to taskwork, and all Israel stoned him to death with stones. They killed him, and King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee Jerusalem, so he wouldn't be killed. So, if conservative Protestants say that the Bible is completely free from error and they take a fundamentalist approach, then if you're going to quote, spare the rod, spoil the child, that comes from Proverbs. And the passages in Proverbs accurately and precisely portray Solomon's parenting style, then that means the Bible's message is that it didn't work. It was not good. As an adult, Solomon's son Rehoboam was vicious, unfeeling, inconsiderate to his subjects, had no regard for human rights, and was widely hated. He barely escaped assassination at the hands of his own people. Perhaps the Bible's true message is, if you don't want your children to grow up to be like Rehoboam, then you should not follow. If you want your kids to grow up to be like Rehoboam, then you should not follow Solomon's parenting style as it is accurately described in the Bible. You should avoid using a spanking or any other form of corporal punishment. These conclusions agree with recent studies which indicate that 1 out of every 3 boys has a genetic problem that will almost certainly cause him to engage in criminal or antisocial acts later in life if he is physically abused. It is unknown what level of corporal punishment will push these kids over the edge and make them become violent and aggressive as adults. On the other hand, many Christians will argue that because the Bible is inerrant, that Solomon's parenting recommendations reflect God's expectations. As conservative Protestants are obliged to beat his stem with the rod as the preferred form of discipline. All right? That's how God wanted it. Oh, get the fuck out of here, man. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it from him. Withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. Thou shalt beat him with the rod. So there's more quotes about spare the rod. Thou shalt beat him with the rod. Thou shalt deliver his soul from hell. The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself bringing his mother to shame. So This King James was gay. I want to mention. I want to end it off on that. There's also 13 countries where being an atheist will get you killed. But he was in love. He tried to Robert Carr. He was in love with Robert. They called him Queen James, right? Queen Elizabeth to Queen James. It was so well known. His favorite male lovers were Earl of Somerset and Duke of Buckingham. And he said, he to Robert Carr, which was a cousin of his. He says he leans on his arm, pinches his cheek, smooths his ruffled garment, looks upon Carr, directs his speech to others. He said something about lying in my chamber. You must lie in my chamber because I'm king. And eventually, the poor young Carr gets. Queen James the first was known homosexual, murdered his young lovers, and victimized countless heretics and women. His cruelty was justified by his divine right of kings. Although the title page of the King James Bible boasted that it was newly translated out of the original tongues, the work was actually a revision of the Bishop's Bible of 1568, which was a revision of the Great Bible of 1539, which itself was based on 3 previous English translations from the early 1500s. So the men who produced the King James Bible not only inherited some of the errors made by previous English translators, but invented some of their own. So, they're gay. He was gay. Queen James was gay. Just look at a picture. Just look at what he looks like. He looks gay. Right? Looks can be deceiving, but, it's documented. And so the Protestants, y'all listen to a gay man's version of the Bronze Age text. It comes from the Bronze Age, the Bible, right?